Welcome to Andy Staples On3. Happy Sunday night. Oh, things are a-changing. We talked about it on Friday if you were popping on the on-demand videos on Friday, but we have not had a show since the Big Ten and SEC said, hold on, everybody. We're taking the wheel. We got to talk about this. Jesse Simonton, On3 national columnist. There's a lot to digest, Jesse, including a column just written by Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, where he talks about how the Big Ten and the SEC kind of forming their advisory group, which feels like a takeover, also may affect the college football playoff going forward. There is a lot to chew on with this, Jesse. So let's go back to Friday afternoon when the Big Ten and the SEC release a joint statement saying Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey will form an advisory group of two that will have no official power, but probably has the power to change everything.
I mean, Greg Sankey's long sat in the catbird seat of these conversations, and I think that actually we can spin that off into an interesting avenue as we kind of dive into this about what that means and kind of his position. But he and Tony Petitti are the two power players in college athletics right now. And you wrote the column that I think kind of pinpointed why this makes sense and specifically why what's different now. You know, if this was Kevin Warren, these two guys aren't going to form this pseudo quote unquote alliance.
Can't use the A word.
They should have, Andy. They should have used the A word because it would have been funny. If they had leaned into it, it would have actually been even funnier.
This time it's actually an alliance.
Yeah, but years ago, Kevin Warren and Sankey were never going to sit down and play Littlefinger and what's his name, the other guy on Game of Thrones, kind of form this interesting union. Petitti and Sankey will, and
Tyrion Lannister?
Tyrion's a good one. No, I'm blanking on Varys.
Oh, yes. Varys, the master of whispers. Yes.
Yes. You weren't going to have those two guys come together. Now you do have Petitti and Sankey. And it certainly seems like this is them setting the table, whether they claim this organization or this little pact is going to actually have power. It seems to be setting the table that the two biggest power players from the two biggest power conferences are going to dictate what the future of college athletics ultimately look like.
And it is going to have power because they have the ones everybody watches. I mean, Tony Altimore on Twitter did a really interesting study where he looked at the ratings for the last, I want to say 10 years and found out that like 75% of the audience is 19 teams. And it's mostly Big Ten and SEC teams. So they're going to be able to dictate terms to these guys because none of the other people can function or make the kind of money they make now without the teams of the Big Ten and the SEC.
Yeah, and you know what else is kind of interesting about this? And again, I think what's notable about Sankey is that, he has kind of talked, I think, out of both sides of his mouth. And you kind of, again, I think, noted this in your column. He's said he wants to focus on kind of the big realities. He told Ross Dellinger, you brought him up. He had he was quoted in a column, I think, on Saturday or Friday, talking about wanting to focus on the big realities of the sport and instead of kind of the little individual bickering with the
translation,
NIL
leave my teams alone, NCAA.
Right. Well, right. But the irony is that it was just a year ago that Sankey, along with every other commissioner in college football, was asking the NCAA to fix NIL and to look into possible NIL penalties. So again, there has been a little both sides, but that doesn't mean these guys can't change their mind. And I do think that's where Sankey has ultimately come down on, where he thinks the broader structure, the infrastructure, the structure of what college sports looks like has to change. And he's correct in that.
So Todd in the chat, that's what the NCAA wants them to do, hence the letter from the NCAA president suggesting they form a new subdivision. They want to wash their hands of it and put it on the schools. That's not true, Todd. Like the NCAA, the leaders of the NCAA don't want the Big Ten and the SEC to leave, because then there's no more money for the NCAA. Like the people in charge of the NCAA have to go find new jobs at that point, because it becomes a much different organization, a much smaller organization. And it really, I mean, it becomes an event management group at that point, and the events are not that exciting. Like if you lose the Big Ten and the SEC, you also lose a lot of the NCAA basketball tournament, which is very valuable. It funds the entire NCAA. So you can't, they're not trying to push them out. Trust me. They don't want to do that, because that would just effectively eliminate their big fat salaries. So this is what I'm wondering, Jesse, is what do you think Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti think their end game is right now? Because I don't know if they know what it is, but I wonder what they think it is.
Well, I hope it's not asking for more congressional or governmental oversight, which Sankey that has been something that Sankey has, kind of gotten behind multiple times in recent years. I mean, he's fought hard for Congress to pass a law to kind of turn back the clock on some of these NIL laws, and to really have the government kind of again oversee the future of college sports. I don't think that should be, at least my opinion, I don't think that should be the way, they should try to find a solution here. I would argue, and I'll see what you think on this, I would argue that they need to convince their own member institutions, i.e. the schools, that, hey, if we want to actually solve and get around some of these issues, let's come up with a collective bargaining agreement. Let's come up with a model where the players will be contracted employees. They can then still make NIL as either whether it's high school or college students independent of that, i.e. as if like you were an Olympian athlete and you wanted to go get a deal with Kellogg's.
Right, or you're LeBron
or
and you have your Sprite deal that's independent of your Lakers salary. Yes.
Exactly. So I would think that these commissioners need to use their power to sway their member institutions that, hey, let's come up with some sort of model where your coaches want it. The coaches want structure. The coaches want governance.
They don't care if they're paid, not paid. Like they just want some rules. Yeah,
they want rules. So let's come up with a foundational system where this is as Matt Rule told me, Andy. We basically are a professionalized sport with a non-professionalized structure. Professionalize the sport. It's okay if it's going to be minor league football. People will get used to it. They will still watch the games.
People won't even get used to it. They'll just watch it because they want to see the logos on the helmets and they want to see the best players. And they'll still get both.
Yeah. Exactly. But my point is that people change their minds all the time. It was 2015 that Roger Goodell was saying that we'll never have gambling in the NFL because it was going to break the sport. And now we're having the damn Super Bowl in Las Vegas,
exactly
less than a decade later. So people will change their minds. But I think, don't you think that's where Sankey and Petitti have to get behind? They need to convince their schools that this is in the best interest for everyone.
And I think I think it's interesting because the Big Ten has been ahead of the SEC in terms of individual schools talking about that, because you've had Big Ten schools mention revenue sharing going back a couple of years now. You have not heard it as much in the SEC, but it has certainly been discussed quietly in the SEC by people who are influential, by athletic directors. So it's not like this has not been discussed. And the thing about Greg Sankey that I will point out, what he said, it's very similar to what we would see from Nick Saban. We remember Nick Saban would complain about something publicly, but behind the scenes was working to just adjust to it however he needed to adjust to it.
Right.
That is Greg Sankey. Complaining publicly, whining to Congress. They were all whining to Congress. But I think behind the scenes, gaming out other scenarios. And I think this is an admission that, okay, may not be getting what we want from Congress. Clearly, the NCAA and the other schools are not going to help us get there. So we're going to have to drag everybody there. I think that's what they're saying.
And that should be the avenue they take. And I think some folks are going to be nervous about, are we destined to go to, these two conference super league and whatever. I actually think if Petiti and Sankey can convince all these member institutions to get behind some sort of, again, model where the players are compensated as employees and there is a CBA, and you have some sort of union. I do think, the top schools in the ACC, you would have almost everybody in the quote unquote, what did you rename them? The big and
We're calling
rich,
the core four. That won the poll. Core four is your winner.
All right, core four. So the big and rich is going to lead the way.
Yes,
that's
correct.
SEC and Big Ten, and then the core four. I think the rest of the core four would get behind it, because the one issue that people never bring up with the whole Super League is that you're going to have a lot of schools taking losses, and a lot of losses, and they don't want to have all those losses. And so the more if you can kind of keep it with as many teams that are still in this pool as you have right now, the Kentuckys and Dukes of the world can still make bowl games and win 8 games a year, where their fans at least feel like, hey, we got our money's worth. You lose 8-9 games a year, suddenly you don't feel that way.
Dion in the chat, NCAA refuses to get its act together. We have a lot to clean up, so hopefully the two conferences won't further ruin football than it already is. It's not ruined. I'm sick of this. Honestly, stop it, people. We see the ratings. You like it better now. Like, stop pretending we're stupid. Stop pretending that you're stupid. You like this better. You may say you don't, but your actions suggest you do. So just stop it. Now, if they get their act together, there will not be unlimited free agency, but there will still be movement. Yeah, Dion, he says, I hate it, STFU. Dion, it's 8:12 p.m. Eastern time on a Sunday night. You're watching a YouTube show about college football. I hate to break it to you. You freaking love college football. So,
hey, good for you. It's the best sport in America.
And thanks for watching, by the way.
Yeah.
Dion, I'm 62 and it's ruined. Yeah, okay, Boomer. How'd you find the YouTube show? Like, how'd you figure out how to work the YouTube stream? You love it.
Dion's on all the message boards getting hyped about Dylan Rail.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You love it. Okay. Back to the drawing board here, because we do have to figure out what they're going to do. And the thing that I find interesting, Jesse, is there's so many different ways to play at this. Ross, I mentioned Ross just had a story about the college football playoff. Like, if they really want to flex, they can mess with the college football playoff structure, which, by the way, is not set post 2025. If they really wanted to do something drastically soon, they could do that.
And by the way, I believe it's the only, as you said, the NCAA is going to be really good at putting on events no one really watches. That's also the only championship that the NCAA has no control over, right?
Correct. But yeah. Apparently the Pac-2 has control. That's the best part. Like, right now, the holdup on the format for what will be the college football playoff this coming season is that Kirk Schultz, the president of Washington State, will not give the 2-PACs vote. Remember, it's not the Pac-12 anymore. It's the 2-PAC. Will not give the 2-PACs vote to give the unanimous vote so they can approve the format until they are guaranteed voting rights past 2025, which of course nobody wants to give them, because right now they've only got 2 schools.
2 schools, but they got two proud institutions, Andy, that are fighting a good fight. They're trying to keep West Coast football alive and well.
Well, I think they could form a fine conference there. If they merge with the Mountain West, that could be a fun football conference. But in terms of the college football playoff, in terms of big time college football, that's not the same thing. Like it. And if you're the Big Ten and the SEC, you're looking at this going, look at this crap. This is what we have to deal with. This is why we have to start making the decisions.
Yeah, and Sankey's looking at, the back and forth that Tennessee is now, embroiled in with the NCAA, and they, both sides kind of shot their shot again this weekend. Saturday, the NCAA responded. Sunday, today, the AGs in Tennessee and Virginia had their response, and it's just the amount of tone deafness from the NCAA is just insane. But as I've said, Andy, on multiple radio shows this past week, the irony is in all this is that they're all bad actors. There's no good actors. The NCAA is the easy punching bag and is clearly the big bad villain, because they you see what they say on Saturday, and it's just so nonsensical that it's like,
well, we can talk about that, because this all has to do with that too. Like, all of this is interconnected. So what Jesse's talking about is the case where the Tennessee and Virginia AGs have sued the NCAA basically on behalf of the University of Tennessee, because the University of Tennessee is being investigated for NIL stuff. And so they're trying to invalidate the NIL rules. There's a hearing on February 13th where if a judge were to grant a temporary restraining order, the NIL rules would be basically invalidated. And so the NCAA issued its response. Now, I did think they made one good point. I don't always praise the NCAA, but I'll say they made one good point. The Tennessee state law also prohibits inducing recruits with NIL deals. They did point that out. They did know that. Your AG doesn't seem to notice his own state law. But that said, the rest of it was not great, because they went with the competitive equity argument, which they have no data to back up. And unfortunately, it's a small sample size, but there is some data to back up that since NIL and the transfer rules have changed, things have gotten more competitive.
Yeah, to me, it read off like a complete misunderstanding about how recruiting works.
Yes.
It's like, oh, newsflash. Prospects like going to better schools with nicer facilities and a greater, infrastructure and better coaches. Like yes, that's an inducement, but that is also just like naturally how recruiting has worked since it's ever started. I can't wait till the folks that work in Indianapolis and the NCAA realize that, 5-star hotels are nicer than a Motel 6, or that flying first class comes with perks. It was like newsflash 101. The most interesting thing I thought that came out of the response today from the Tennessee folks, or the Tennessee AG, was basically acknowledging the reality that the only reason there's confusion about these rules, in terms of the governing market, and what isn't and isn't allowed for these collegiate athletes, is because the NCAA is constantly changing, the definition of these incoherent rules. They keep moving the goalposts. And that, again, is why we are now seeing Sankey, again, you said this, it's all tied together. And that's why Sankey and Petiti are coming together to figure out how can we best, fix this problem, which is these moving goalposts.
So Dion back in the chat says, right now there are no rules and anything goes. Nebraska has $500 million to build a new end zone. What if Nebraska spends $500 million on buying an Addy? Well, guess what? That would make the sport more interesting, because Nebraska stinks right now. So if Nebraska stopped stinking, that would be a team that is not currently capable of competing, becoming able to compete, which would be interesting. Again, people keep bringing up examples of things that are not actually bad.
That also isn't that they also could choose to do that.
Right.
Like in his,
well, they can't now, but they could. They could a week from Tuesday if the TRO gets granted.
Well, no, they could spend however much money they want on NIL. If they wanted to spend $500 million, they could.
Well, they couldn't yet. They'd have to raise it, but you're right. You're exactly right. And that the other part of that nobody understands is there's only a finite amount of money.
Right.
And not everybody wants to give to NIL. That's it. That's my other argument against all this. And this isn't what's being argued by anybody in the court system right now, but this is, I guarantee you, something Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are thinking of. And that is, Dion asks, is that fair to the other teams? Yes, it's fair to the other teams because they could do the same thing.
Also, college football.
What if they don't have the money?
Fair.
Tough. Have a bake sale. All right.
Also, college football's never been fair.
Right. Exactly.
There's been an inequity. He's arguing on behalf of a Nebraska program that literally, I don't know how you want to say that 30 years ago was able to get, 50 walk-ons,
right,
and have them, under other scholarship things. That's how they ended up building.
Well, the Nebraska people say that those county scholarships didn't exist, so they say that's another lie too. So
okay.
No, but here's what I think Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti probably are thinking of, because they're getting this from their schools. The current way of funding NIL, the current way of funding player compensation, I'm going to stop calling it NIL because that's not what it is. It's player compensation. But the current way of funding it is you're begging your fans for it. And then you're telling them they don't want to win if they don't want to give you money to do that. Like, you should be budgeting for that yourself.
Oh yeah, that's gross.
Yeah. So
yeah,
that bothers me. I feel bad for the fans in that sense. And I'm sure that the Greg Sankeys and the Tony Petittis of the world are getting it from the ADs on the ground saying, listen, we cannot keep doing this to our fans because this is turning them off. This is making them mad. And it would make me furious as a fan to hear the coach say, well, you don't care enough about winning if you don't give me some money to buy a tight end.
Yeah,
like,
no, I mean,
I give you money.
Exactly. Did you see? I mean, I thought Dan Wolken phrased it really well in a column last week, where he was like, "It's the only sport, or it's a sport now that has come to. What if you said, yo, Patrick Mahomes, you told Chiefs fans, if you don't give us X amount of dollars for Patrick Mahomes, he's going to go play for the Denver Broncos tomorrow." I mean, it's absurd. So, and that's what college football is right now.
And the rules need to change to allow the schools to pay that and fund it either out of their TV money or their TV money and donations. But it doesn't need to be these two separate pots. It needs to be something that's tied in with the schools. And I think that's what they're going to go for. I really don't think that Sankey and Petitti got together to go lobby Congress some more. I think they realize that's probably a fool's errand. I think they're probably going to try to create a system that works for them, which may not work for everyone else.
Maybe it won't work for everyone else, but I do think there will be plenty of other schools outside of the big and rich that would jump on board.
Well, the ACC and the Big 12 for sure. So Ferris in the chat, money talk. Let's say Andy is a billionaire. All right, sweet. Could he get a MAC school to turn into the Gonzaga of college football? There's a spot for an undefeated MAC team to get into the field of 12 every year. All right, so do you think I could become like Toledo's sugar daddy? We got to call Toledo AD Brian Blair and be like, Brian, I'm hooking you $100 million a year every year, or not $100 million. What do I get? What would he shaving off in interest from $1 billion every year? Like if I just sit it in an account, or if I had like a medium growth mutual fund, like am I shaving off $30 million a year for Toledo to just go buy a championship?
I think you could afford a little somewhere around $50 million.
Okay.
I think you'd probably have to tell Jason Candle, hey, maybe you want to be an offensive coordinator somewhere.
We will get to Jason Candle in a minute because we do have some actual football to talk about.
I'm going to have to hire a big-time coach if I'm going to be winning the MAC, undefeated every year.
Listen. Jason Candle's been up for all those jobs. It may be that he just needs the right sugar daddy. But
okay. So,
let's spin this forward. 5 years from now, what has the alliance? I almost said alliance. What has the partnership between the Big Ten and the SEC? Joke. Yeah. What has the partnership between the Big Ten and the SEC wrought? Will it be a super league? Will it be a different NCAA that has a kind of subdivision at the top where there are rules, but there are also contracts, and there's also maybe a CBA?
Within 5 years, yes, we're barreling towards that.
That's amazing. But I will say, so there's a case, we've mentioned it a few times on the show, and I've said this before. I tend to stay away from this on the show because I think it makes a lot of people's eyes glaze over. But the reason we're talking about this now is because it is so big and so monumental, big and rich. But the House versus the NCAA case, which is basically former athletes sued the NCAA saying, hey, if you hadn't been breaking the Sherman Act before and had allowed us to get NIL payments, we would have made this over our careers. The settlement to that is potentially in the billions of dollars. The class has been certified. Like, the NCAA says this is an extinction level event. They have to come up with a new system to satisfy that case first, like, to keep people from being able to do that over and over again and just cash in on them.
Well, and how many times can the NCAA just clearly likes whether it's Charlie Brown with a football, they like going into these court cases and just losing every time, as if the Alston 9-0 one wasn't bad enough.
Well, they don't have any valid arguments, and they know it. So at this point, they're barely even trying. Now we'll see with that Tennessee and Virginia one, because they don't have to grant the restraining order. They could just say, we'll leave the rules as is, and then we'll talk it through during the actual case. So that'll be fine if they want to do that. Or they could change everything next Tuesday. Like,
yeah, but I was going to say, but they could lose just like they lost to West Virginia with the transfer case.
In the transfer rules, which I keep pointing out, like, that second transfer having to sit out a year after the second transfer feels like a fairly reasonable rule to me. Like, that doesn't feel totally unreasonable. You gave somebody a free transfer. There's only 4 years to play. Like, it's okay. But it lasted maybe 2 hours in court. It got destroyed.
And the coaches, I will say, talking to a bunch of coaches at the convention, they hate that. They hate that more than almost anything. And some hate it for various reasons. Obviously, selfish reasons for roster management. But then there's others. One very prominent coach who shall not be named here because he didn't say it on the record, but he really was, concerned and talked about, what these multiple transfers are going to do for these kids' academic standing, and how many guys ultimately from now until, they kind of figure out a solution to what this whole system is actually going to look like, end up graduating with no degrees and are, 28 years old, have been to 3 or 4 universities and have really nothing to stand on. Okay,
poor Dion in the chat. I'm not sure Dion actually watches college football. So it's going to be boring if the 5 richest schools in America win the Natty every year. That's crap. What the hell do you think has been happening the last 15 years before NIL?
Or after NIL. NIL has not changed who's winning the national championship.
Oh, I don't know that Michigan could have won it before NIL. Michigan wasn't recruiting like Ohio State or Alabama. I think they needed Ohio State and Alabama to lose a few players. Like, if Alabama is the Alabama of 2017-ish, if they're recruiting like that, you think they lose to Michigan this year?
But can't it just be as simple as that they didn't have a rock star quarterback?
If Alabama could snap the ball, they would have beaten Michigan this year. But that's another story. Yeah, but that's also an NIL thing and a transfer portal thing. Because before, they would have had somebody that they could put in to snap, and they didn't.
You got me thinking, because it's like, did Michigan win because they didn't win? They didn't win in spite of NIL, but I don't know if they won because of it.
Chris Callahan in the chat, no, because some of those Georgia players would be at Bama. Probably true. All right, Jesse, let's shift to football. We're going to have time to talk about this over the next few weeks. This is not going away. This is going to be something that we're talking about for the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But we got to talk about some football. You had a column on Friday because the really interesting situation. We talked about a little bit on the show Thursday night. So Chip Kelly it was reported by Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network that Chip Kelly had interviewed twice for the Raiders offensive coordinator job. There was talk that maybe he was still open. And there's a reason why. There was talk Thursday night that Chip also might be a candidate for the Commanders OC job. But at the time on Thursday night, Cliff Kingsbury was about to take the Raiders job. And then on Saturday, he said, nope, not taking the Raiders job. Now he might take the Commanders job. So the Raiders job is open again. Chip Kelly, Jesse, you remember late in the season? So the week of the USC game, UCLA was coming off a loss. And there were all these reports out of LA.
State lost. Bad Arizona State.
Yes, they lost to Arizona State. And there are all these reports out of LA that maybe there's a separation coming between Chip Kelly and UCLA. And then they beat USC, and it all dies down. Then they get shelled by Cal, but it doesn't come back. So
then they win the bowl game.
Yep.
And it's like, all right, we survived. And in hindsight, they should have fired him. Because now when you look at everything, it has been you referenced the column I wrote, they should have fired Chip Kelly because he clearly wants out of Westwood. And now the Bruins are in a complete lose-lose situation. They're in a union with a coach who doesn't want to be there, but their top two targets are off the board. Jed Fish and Jonathan Smith have now taken jobs elsewhere. Those would have been easily their top two targets. Dante Moore, your five-star quarterback, is now at Oregon. You just lost your defensive coordinator who completely turned around your unit. You had one of the best defenses in the country this past season. He's now working for your
He's across town.
Yep. So it's been a disastrous season. So whether Chip stays or goes, they're in a tough spot.
So Adam Schefter reports 8 minutes ago that the Commanders are hiring Cliff Kingsbury indeed. So he's in. He's in with the Commanders now.
Caleb
so the
Williams?
Raiders job still open. What's that?
They're gonna make a play for Caleb, you think?
I would think so, but that would depend on what the Bears are going to do. Are the Bears going to keep Justin Fields, trade the pick, or are they going to take Caleb? Because Caleb Williams is the number one pick. Like, I was at the Senior Bowl last week talking to people, watching the other quarterbacks, thinking very hard about Drake May and Jaden Daniels. Caleb Williams is the number one pick. There is not anybody else. He's the number one pick. So maybe the Commanders try to trade with the Bears and just swap to get Caleb, because maybe the Bears aren't sure what they want to do.
Fascinating. That'll be another plenty of meat on that bone.
But the Chip conversation continues because, like, he got a commitment from a recruit today. Like, he's still working at UCLA, but we've talked about the argument of, are these rules, are the situation in college football chasing coaches to the NFL? In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. Like, Liam Cohen was going to go back for the first play calling NFL OC job he could get. And so he did. He left Kentucky. We talked to Nick Roush about it on Thursday night. Friday morning, it happens. And Liam Cohen goes to the Bucs because it's a play calling NFL OC job, which is what he wanted. But Jeff Hafley leaving Boston College to be the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator probably had a lot to do with the rules. And if Chip is going to be an NFL OC, it absolutely has to do with all the stuff going on in college football, because he's made it very clear he doesn't like it.
Yes, but it also is more nuanced than, because I wrote a column on this as well. It's also more nuanced than suddenly that college football is losing all these coaches to the NFL just because of what's happening within the sport. That absolutely has some veracity to it. But Jeff Hafley also was looking to reset his clock. I mean, he was, on the hot seat a year ago.
Because he might have gotten fired with a 5-7 season.
Yeah. And so he's looking to reset his clock. You look at who else has gone from college to the NFL this cycle. They all have NFL ties. Jesse Minter came from the league. Obviously, Harbaugh's going back. Hafley, worked at multiple NFL jobs before becoming Ohio State.
Before he was at Ohio State, yeah. So, so what do you do? I mean, Martin Jarman, I think, is stuck at this point because he had a chance to do something with Chip. I don't think you don't do anything with Chip now. You just let him ride it out. unless he gets a job. Now, I thought maybe he might go for BC because it's a little bit different job than UCLA, and it is home. He's from New England. It's home for him. But that certainly seems like Bill O'Brien is probably the most likely candidate at this point. We don't know yet. Nothing's set in stone. But yeah, I do wonder.
Could open up Ohio State.
Right. Would open up the Ohio State OC job, where Ryan Day, who used to work with Chip Kelly, played for Chip Kelly at New Hampshire. Right. Would that be a situation? Because I saw the Iowa report. I didn't know what to think of that. Like, that's not one that I've heard verified independently or anything like that. So I saw that. But, would Chip take a college OC job? I don't know. Unless he just feels like he's got to get out of there.
Yeah. Has Mike McDonald, does he have an offensive coordinator target with?
Well, he was allegedly looking at Ryan Grubb, but it seems like that's calmed down right now. This is for the Seahawks.
Right.
And Ryan Grubb is Ryan Grubb is the Alabama offensive coordinator who came with Kalen DeBoer from Washington. So,
but don't you think UCLA's brass has got to be kicking themselves because Chip has been frustrated. Again, like you said, he has never been shy about voicing his opinions. He went viral. Was it just like 6 weeks ago during their bowl game, talking about what his vision for the future of the sport would look like, and how football should be separate than every other sport. And they would maintain the conferences with volleyball and baseball and basketball.
Oh, yeah. What he laid out was really smart. Like, what he laid out, I hope they listened to him. I think he had some good ideas. But
no, I agree.
But it doesn't sound like he wants to be a part of it right now. So, and that's the hard part. If you're UCLA paying him all this money, like, you want somebody who's all in. So that's a frustrating situation. Let's talk, before I let you go, I want to talk about the situation in Columbus, because if Bill O'Brien does indeed wind up becoming Boston College's head coach, what do you do if you're Ryan Day? Because you made a conscious decision. I'm giving up play calling. I am hiring this extremely experienced play caller to handle game planning, play calling for me, so I can concentrate on the other CEO duties that I need to concentrate on. What do you do if that guy leaves? Because it's not like, you're Ohio State, so you can command a lot of different people's attention. But are you going to find what you're comfortable with now?
Yeah, and I think Day made a very conscientious decision to bring in someone that had, not only Bill O'Brien's experience, but that he, was another guy that had been a head coach before. And I think someone that, he could lean on a little bit. And so that there's only going to be so many of those types of folks out on the market.
We mentioned Jason Candle.
We mentioned
the Toledo
Jason
coach.
Candle. And that is, and we have now seen Visa Alabama, O'Brien's former employer, a couple of head coaches at G5 schools give up their head coaching responsibilities, Kane Womack and Mo Linquist, to become coordinators at the Power 5 level. Jason Candle was a rumored target of Mario Cristobal before he hired Josh Gaddis
and also
his original staff.
Also possibly in the mix for the head coaching job at Boston College himself. So, like, this is what we're going to have to wait on. We've got to wait until Boston College makes a decision before we go too much farther. Al Washington would be another name that we considered there.
He played there, right?
Yes. But Bill O'Brien, and this has been pointed out, his family situation, he has a special needs child who the care that he's received in Boston apparently has been very good. And so it would be very helpful to not have to move him. And so that's the other piece of it too. People always forget with these coaching moves, there are sometimes family considerations. Yeah. So I think what happens there is really interesting, because I don't think that decision was easy for Ryan Day. I don't think giving up that level of control, giving up the thing that kind of got you there. And we've talked about it on this show. Like, it worked for Eli Drinkwitz. It didn't work for Gus Malzahn because he's apparently going back to play calling now. Like, he's flip-flopped on that a million times now. And, Mike Norvell needs to call plays. He's better as a play caller. Like, it's a strange situation. And I imagine
I got you one more. I have a column coming out, or a feature coming out later this week. I got to finish it, but Rhett Lashley, another guy who has kind of been through this yo-yo. I sat down with him for a long time in Nashville. He's a guy who feels like he needs to call plays. That is part of his value, and so,
what makes him special. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so it had to be hard for Ryan Day to make that decision, and so if it just because of crazy circumstance, which, think about this, Jeff Hafley and Ryan Day came to Ohio State about the same time on Urban Meyer's staff, and it's Jeff Hafley's move that could wind up doing this,
precipitating this. Yeah. And
so
and like you said, they're not going to have a shortage of candidates. It's Ohio State. It's much like Kentucky, although in an even better spot, obviously, because it's Ohio State. But Mark Stoops is going to be able to hire somebody good. Ryan Day is in a more unique position because he is giving up play calling and looking for someone that he trusts to kind of bridge his vision with the overall program. The tough part is just timing. It's we're weeks away from spring practice, and it's just the timing is ill for kind of everybody in the market for such a premier position like offensive coordinator right now.
Yeah, it is going to be very strange if O'Brien takes that job, because Ryan Day will have to, make the decision, like, do I still follow through with this plan? Is the right person out there, or do I go back to what we were doing before? That's the tricky part, and I guess we're gonna see what happens. But Jesse, it's been a pleasure. We're gonna bring you back here in the next few days, because, man, the SEC and the Big Ten, they got their hands on the wheel now.
They're making moves.
The actual alliance, the alliance that will actually work. They'll actually do something. Oh my God. Well, we'll find out what happens. Jesse, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
All right. So, a lot going on in the world of college football. We got to start getting ourselves ready for college basketball. Like, we're going to be doing a little bracketology stuff here in the next couple of weeks. It is February now. That means March is not far away. And there was a big weekend for college hoops this weekend. You had North Carolina beating Duke. Big game from Armando Bacot, where it did feel kind of like North Carolina was the men, and Duke, they're the younger guys or the boys, and it's kind of where college basketball is right now, because you can be a very old, like, power conference team now. For a long time, you had to be young if you were a big money school, because you had to get the one and done guys. But now there's so many different ways to win, and so North Carolina looking great this year. We had our questions. Hubert Davis takes them to the national title game. Then they flop, and now they look like a national title contender again. It's pretty amazing, but they've done a good job in the transfer portal. They've done a good job cultivating that roster, and so big win for them. Huge win for Kansas. Houston's intro to the Big 12 has been pretty fun to watch, because Houston is a great team, can completely blow you out on the right night. But Houston went into Fog Allen and got demolished by Kansas. And that's what happens. Like, you can be great, but you can go on the road in February and just get crushed. So I can't wait to see what happens in the Big 12. Big Monday is starting in earnest now. It took a while, because you had the Super Wildcard weekend where there's an NFL playoff game on Monday night a couple weeks ago. But, like, tomorrow night, Monday night, Kansas at K-State in the Octagon of Doom. So 2 days after you just blew out Houston, you got to go on the road to your rival. Like, that's where these things get tricky. That's where these things get tricky. So also, we had Nick Roush on the other day. So Kentucky folks are just down bad in general. I think Nick summed up how Big Blue Nation feels Thursday night when he came on. And he was in his feelings, and rightfully so, because they were about to lose their offensive coordinator, and he knew it. And then the Wildcats had just lost to Florida it was a game they should have won. Let's be real here. They should have won that game. Tennessee comes in there and just molly whoops them in Rupp Arena. First time the Wildcats have given up 100 points in Rupp Arena since 1993. So DJ Wagner needs to come back. When they get him back, they're a different team. But college basketball is getting fun. Fun. By the way, in the women's game, Caitlin Clark, some point probably in the next 3 games, is going to break Kelsey Plum's all-time Division I scoring record. Caitlin Clark was awesome against Maryland. She's pulling up from the logo over and over and had 12 assists in that game. So it's getting fun in college hoops. We're going to be talking a little more about that because this is a football show. But let's be real here. The NCAA tournament is one of the greatest events in American sports. It's so much fun. The bracket is so much fun. We got to be ready for that. We can't just come in unaware. We have to be ready. All right. But we do need to get back to football. Last week I was at the Senior Bowl, talked to a bunch of the guys. The game was on Saturday. And it turned out I talked to the MVP. Spencer Rattler only played 2 series, the former South Carolina and Oklahoma quarterback. And he was spectacular in those 2 series. So this is one that it felt like he had the highest ceiling of like who could go to the Senior Bowl and help themselves the most. I think Michael Penix helped himself. I think Bo Nix helped himself. But Penix didn't play in the game because I think he felt like he'd done pretty well at practice. But Spencer Rattler had a good week. And in terms of arm talent, there aren't many guys in the draft other than Caleb Williams who have that level of arm talent. Jaden Daniels probably. But it puts Spencer Rattler in an interesting spot because I think there are going to be some teams that look at him and say, there's big upside here. Now, does that mean he's going to play his way in the first round? I don't know. There are also question marks. But when he can go there and show that with that level of competition, it's certainly helpful. So here is Spencer Rattler. South Carolina quarterback Spencer Rattler. I love this Gamecock on the hat. Where is this? This is Spencer Rattler NIL special. Is this something South Carolina has?
This is more South Carolina, actually Connor Shaw's company.
Very
Gamecock Supply. So he has awesome gear.
So do all these South Carolina quarterbacks stick together? Connor Shaw. I know Todd Ellis is always around. No Mike Holt sightings or anything like that. But
yeah, no, I mean all the guys that have played. Connor Shaw, he's always around. Yeah. Todd Ellis, a lot of the guys. So it's cool to be around them.
What was that like? I mean, that obviously when you were in high school, you're a huge recruit. You're going to Oklahoma. Everything seems set. If someone told you you're going to go to South Carolina for 2 years and you're going to love it, what would you have said?
I would have said you're crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I never thought South Carolina was any idea coming out of high school. But as you grow, as you know, opportunities arise, as you go through adversity, that was something that popped up, and it was a great move for me.
What did you learn from that experience, from transferring, from starting over, from 2 different offenses there?
I just learned, how to acclimate into new systems, how to acclimate with new teammates in a new environment, everything new. All the way out there on the East Coast, I enjoyed it a lot. I had to gain trust and respect from my teammates and learn how to do that.
So when now you're trying to talk to these NFL coaches, they're telling you, okay, here's this play. You got to repeat it. You got to redraw it. How much does it help that you've now been through several offensive systems?
It helps a ton. A lot of the stuff we're doing up here right now isn't foreign to me. We worked a lot of this stuff, and I'm very familiar with a lot of it. So it kind of helps me, be ahead of the curve, which is good.
What's it like being out there, at these practices, getting a chance to show them live what you can do? Because it's one thing to do it at the combine, but to actually do it in a practice setting, probably gives you a little better chance to show them what you're actually like on a day-to-day basis.
No doubt. It's awesome to be out here with all the best guys in the country. I mean, this is the best you're going to get out here, no matter what the conference is. They say this is where the path to the draft starts. This is where everything starts. So that's serious. A lot of big-time coaches, GMs, everybody out there. So it's a blessing to be out here. I'm just going to work my tail off every day and try to play clean ball.
So going back to your college career, what is your favorite memory at South Carolina? If you could pinpoint one, what's that moment that you'd like to just bottle?
Definitely 2022 season, that Tennessee win, and then beating Clemson that next week. It was special.
What was that week? Because we talked about that all off season, where it just seemed like everything finally clicks in that Tennessee game, and then it rolls into the Clemson game.
Yeah, we just started playing to our strengths. We had a lot of weapons. I mean, I felt like we had one of the best rosters in the country. We just had to use it properly. And, starting that Tennessee week, we got the ball in our playmakers' hands and pushed the ball down the field and just had fun.
What does it feel like when you're in a game like that Tennessee game, for example, where everything's clicking, where it's finally all working? When you get the call from the sideline, is it just like, this is absolutely going to work every time?
Yeah, you never know if it's going to work every time, but you have a high confidence that it will. Everything was clicking that game. And, obviously it was a home game for us. We got a great environment at Willie B. And, we were just hitting on all cylinders, and that was a fun night.
I saw you got asked what advice you would have given your 17-year-old self, and you said to be humble. But how hard is that when you are put on a reality TV show? You have cameras following you around in high school. How hard is it to be humble when you have the recruiting, everything else?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've always been a humble but confident kid. I would just say keep working hard to my younger self. Never expect anything to be given to you. And, keep a level head through everything, success and adversity.
How did you deal with that? Like when everything was happening at Oklahoma, people can be really nasty. Like, how do you turn off social media? Do you just go somewhere? How do you handle when that comes?
I mean, it's part of the game, especially as a quarterback. I mean, I'm not the first guy to go through it. So I'm blessed to be able to go through it earlier in my career because, that happens in the NFL a lot. So I'm ready for whatever.
So what can you show NFL teams right now, these next few months? What do you plan to show them?
I can show them I'm one of the best quarterbacks in this draft. I can make every throw on the field. I'm a quick processor, fast learner, can understand multiple offensive systems, and I can get it done. So that's what I want to show throughout these next few months.
That one experience out there yesterday, first practice, first few throws, you feel good, feel like yourself?
Felt great. Other than the balls not being broken in enough, we're rolling, and it was a fun day one.
Well, it'll be broken in today. So
that's
Spencer,
awesome.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. And they were really broken in by the time the game started because, like I said, he was dealing on Saturday. So I was thinking about this. Other than Michael Pratt at Tulane, the most of the quarterbacks that were there Senior Bowl week had played for two different teams. You had Michael Penix, Indiana and Washington. You had Bo Nix, Auburn and Oregon. Spencer Rattler, Oklahoma, South Carolina. The next two guys that you're going to hear from, also same situation. Sam Hartman, Wake Forest and Notre Dame. And obviously went to Notre Dame to show what he could do in a little bit different environment, different offense, and came away with a pretty good year. And one incredible story about a marshmallow. Now by Notre Dame, Wake Forest, quarterback Sam Hartman. You were in college a long time, Sam.
That's what people are telling me.
Is it weird that it's finally done?
I don't think it's hit me because I'm still kind of in the Notre Dame helmet and still around college guys. And but when you're getting coached by these kind of individuals and these in this environment at the UC Senior Bowl, you start realizing, and also you start realizing the guys around you everybody's getting faster. Everybody's unbelievably savvy players. So it's starting to click how fast the game's going.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because I was thinking about your career, and most guys who stay at the same place as long as you did at Wake Forest, their coaches move around. They go through different offensive schemes or different defensive schemes. You played in the same scheme the whole time, and it took going to another school to play in a different scheme.
Yeah, no, for sure. It was I was really blessed with Wake. I grew so much there and learned so much from just an unbelievable coaching staff, starting with Coach Clausen. He taught me so much, so many lessons, so many things that I learned from him as a man and as a coach. And then Coach R was there for me the whole time. I think that was something that probably gets overlooked in this whole process because people see it as, oh, he left to go to a better offense. It wasn't to go to a better offense. It was just a different offense, right? Yeah. And it was a more pro style. But I mean, all the success, the reason I got to Notre Dame, the reason I'm here is because of them and because of Coach R and his stuff.
What did you take from the Notre Dame experience? Was it what you thought it was going to be?
It was surreal, to be honest. It changed my life for sure. I mean, that fan base, that organization, the culture and the legacy of this, that entire place. It feels like you're in a movie every time you step foot on campus. And, I learned how to handle a lot more off the field, I would say, and the pressures that come with being the Notre Dame quarterback. And it's something that's special and something I'll always cherish.
What is that like in the good ways and in the bad? What is it like to be the Notre Dame quarterback?
I don't know if there's ever bad. I think when you say Notre Dame quarterback, that has a pretty heavy weight behind it. And it was really cool. You get around campus and everybody kind of knows, who you are, what you're doing. And, there's some pressure to that, but I think that's a part of why I wanted to do it. I think if you asked me when I was 12, hey, you want to be the quarterback of Notre Dame? Heck yeah. If you ask me when I'm 40, if I want to be the Notre Dame quarterback, I'd probably say heck yeah. So I don't think there's a lot anybody in the world in their right mind that would say no to that kind of opportunity and the perks that come with it and also the pressure. But that's why you play the position.
So the best throw at Notre Dame, was it one you made or was it the marshmallow?
I would say the marshmallow for sure. That was an unreal.
So tell the folks what happened here.
All right, so a big tradition, senior night at Notre Dame is people throw marshmallows on the field. Don't know why, don't know how, right? And people are laughing, listening. So you got to hear this story. And so we're on the sideline. We got hot chocolate. It's a cold game. I'm walking. The game, I'm like out of the game. We're winning. And from, I would say, 30 yards up, like probably row 40, a girl launches one. And I'm walking, it lands. I'm moving at the same time. It lands in my.
So she led you.
She led the receiver, dunked it in my cup.
She threw your hot chocolate open.
Yeah, she threw me open across the sideline. And obviously, the only thing you can do is chug your hot chocolate after that. And that got the crowd pretty fired up. But it was cool. I think I've met her before at something else, but it was they were pretty fired up.
Have you told the scouts about her?
No, I'm trying to make.
Yeah, you don't want her. Yeah, you don't want her going higher in the draft than everybody else.
Exactly.
So, well, all right, you were in college for a long time. A lot changed in college football with NIL coming in. How did that change day-to-day life in college football for you?
It didn't really change anything. I mean, it's still the game. I know you probably hear horror stories or things about guys living differently and acting differently. I'm sure it's in some places, but I think the great thing about both Wake and Notre Dame was that the coaches in the locker room especially kept the game still pure. There wasn't talks of money and talks of how much you're making and how much you're doing. It was all about the game, and it's a great perk and it's a great part that you can help, like we're learning here, plan for your future and start earning and earning equity and investing and whatnot. But it's still football, and I hope it tries to stay as much as it can, because college football is a special place, and that it's pure there, and as much as it can, try and keep it pure.
Well, and that's what with your locker room, because that's what everybody was worried about, is would it tear locker rooms apart? You said that you didn't hear about it much in there.
No, it wasn't. That was the whole thing as leaders in the locker room and at Wake and at Notre Dame was like, guys, this is the only way this falls apart is people start pocket watching and start wondering, why is this guy making this and I'm making that, and it happens naturally. But if it's something that's in the dark corners, who cares? That's life. But as soon as it becomes the main focus, then football is not, and that's when you struggle.
So as you turn your focus to the NFL, how prepared do you feel for this process?
I feel incredibly prepared. It's a cool experience. I mean, everything comes and they call it drinking out of a fire hose right now. And, it's just the ability, playing for so long and doing this for as long as I have, is, the ability to do that, and then also be able to step back and kind of take a deep breath and rely on the people you're closest to and roll with the punches. Like, I mean, practice yesterday started out, rough for me with the one-on-one reps and wasn't throwing it great. And, you try and get out on the team and make some plays, and that's how it goes. It's not always going to be, perfect throw, perfect play, perfect call, and you just got to roll with it.
And when you get thrown together with guys you haven't played with before, how quick does the connection come with the receivers?
I mean, these guys are really good. It's cool. They kind of make you look good a lot of the time. So it's a hats off to these guys. I mean, they're unbelievable.
So if you could go back and talk to 16, 17-year-old Sam, what would you tell him to expect?
Hold on. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
All right, Sam, appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Of course. Appreciate you.
That's Sam Hartman. I know it was bumpy at times, but he had a really good career. And interesting, because I think people look at what has been said about Sam and what Dave Clawson has said about the situation where he went to Notre Dame and think there's animosity there. There's really not between Sam and Dave Clawson or Dave Clawson and Sam. And I thought it was really nice to mention Warren Ruggiero, the offensive coordinator at Wake Forest, and the offense he played in that helped him become a big enough name to be wanted by Notre Dame for his last season. One more. A guy who started at Michigan, played with a lot of the guys who just won the national title, and then finished up his career at Tennessee, Joe Milton, the guy who handed things off to Nico. Here's Joe. Joined by Joe Milton, Tennessee Vols. What's up, Joe?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing good. So how has your experience been at the Senior Bowl, meeting all these NFL coaches, getting coached by NFL coaches? What is it different than in college?
No. I mean, I've been to Michigan before.
Yeah.
There was a ton of NFL coaches. Man, just got to take every day how you would in life. Approach it the same way. They're not trying to bash you in the ground. They just want to see how good you want to take coaching.
So you go through Jim Harbaugh practices in Michigan. Is it pretty similar to what you've seen so far here?
Yeah, walkthroughs, one-on-ones, 7-on-7, and just the whole nine. Just calling the plays, make sure the huddle is addressed correctly, just getting guys going.
What was it like watching? Some of your former teammates are on that Michigan team that won the national title. What was it like watching them?
It was good, man. I was happy for those guys. If it was anybody else, man, I would have felt the type of way. But for those guys to win that, man, I was excited.
So for you, the season at Tennessee, you had to wait to get to that point. What was it? Do you feel like you got everything out of the Tennessee experience that you wanted?
Absolutely. We didn't accomplish things that we want to accomplish, but I mean, in life, man, that's what's gonna happen, and you just got to be able to roll with it. Sometimes you got to take blows, man, and you got to be able to swing back when life presents itself.
So what was your favorite memory at Tennessee as Tennessee's quarterback?
Favorite memory? I have a lot of them. The biggest one is being our biggest rival, Alabama. That was a long night. Man, we seen the field goal post by our apartment, and that's way downtown. So, man, that was probably one of the.
And you're like, how did these people get it down here?
Man, it was a whole bunch of people carrying it, man. It was like a parade.
The moving from one quarterback, like from Hendon to you to Nico, how much have you guys tried to did Hendon help you, and did you help Nico?
Me and Hendon was a 1-2 punch. We helped each other.
Yeah.
And then me helping Nico was just taking him under my wing, get him to understand what was going on. He's a smart kid, very talented, so just getting him to understand, mistakes are going to happen. You're coming from high school, so you didn't really have to face adversity as much. Being the number one quarterback in the country, coming to college, had to wait a year, just being able to just ask me whatever you want to ask me, and me willing to, take out my time of the day and help him out.
How excited were you for that bowl game performance from him? I mean, it looked like he's ready to go.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's been ready to go, man. I made sure that every game, because you never know what could happen. That's how you always got to treat it as the number 2 quarterback.
So what advice would you get? Because you had that amazing Orange Bowl, and then you get in the offseason, it's just hype. How do you deal with that?
Man, I don't care about social media. Okay. Folks gonna talk whether you do good or bad, man. That's part of life. And you just got to be able to brush it off, not look at it. Obviously you're gonna see it when you have social media, but at the same time, people gonna talk. that's part of the job.
Learn how to block it out. Very
Absolutely.
nice. I'm gonna work on that, Joe.
Perfect.
I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you very much. And it's probably good that Joe can do that because he got ripped pretty good after the Senior Bowl. He had a couple interceptions. He was 9 of 13, but unfortunately 2 picks, including one in the end zone. And Pro Football Focus sent a tweet of that play and said the Joe Milton experience. And Shedeur Sanders, the Colorado quarterback, jumped in and said, I thought you're supposed to be showcasing athletes, not tearing them down. But you just saw Joe. He's not worried about that. He didn't see that. So we will see what Joe Milton can do. Obviously, tremendous physical gifts, but will he wind up being an NFL quarterback? We'll find out. But he will probably be best known in Tennessee lore as the bridge between Hendon Hooker and Nico Yamamalava. Not a bad place to be. Not a bad place to be here with you guys tonight. It was so much fun. We had so much to talk about. And what's going on with the SEC and the Big Ten is going to be the overarching thing. And I know you guys sometimes get tired of the legislative governance type stuff. And we're going to try to keep this as football focused as humanly possible. But these are some big, big changes that are coming down the pipe. And when the two biggies say, you know what, we don't think you guys over here are serious enough, we're taking over, it means there's some stuff coming down the pipe pretty fast. So we'll talk about that. Plus, the second signing day is Wednesday. Not a ton out there, but it means the coaches are off the road. We're going to start having more coaches on the show. So give me some requests. Who do you want to talk to? Hit me up. You know where to find me. I'm on Twitter, Andy_Staples, Instagram, Andy_Staples, and also programming note to get yourselves ready. So we have enjoyed coming to you on the evenings, but we've been talking about it. We think might be able to reach a bigger audience, might be able to be more in the mix with things that are going on if we do this in the mornings. So starting next week, a week from Monday, so on the day after the Super Bowl, February 12th, will be 8 a.m. Eastern time. And if you listen in podcast form, then the podcast will go up immediately after the show. So if it was your morning commute listen, it might need to become your afternoon commute listen, unless you're on the West Coast, and it can still, by all means, be your morning commute listen. So I hope that's okay with everybody. I think you're going to like it better. I think it's going to allow us to be fresher, more current, and keep this thing rolling. And who knows? I've never been the biggest morning person, so maybe I become a morning person. We'll see. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you tomorrow.